You've just heard the final whistle in extra time. It's going to be penalties, but who do you want to step up to take them? The German national team, Jose's Real Madrid, Fergie's United? Well, the best penalty takers in professional football might just come from the East Midlands.
Gibbs White feigns to go one way. Summer saves it! And Forest are going to Wembley!
You probably expect the average team to have won around half of the shootouts that they've been part of. I mean, that's the case for Arsenal. 54% of theirs have ended in wins. For Liverpool, it's even better. They have 68% of theirs as wins. But from any team that's ever played in 10 or more shootouts in England, no one can get close to Nottingham Forest. Over the past 30 years, Forest have been a part of 21 penalty shootouts, and until they finally lost one last year, they had won 12 in a row. They put it right on the next one, beating Exeter, and that brought their win percentage back up to 91%. But what is it about Forest that makes them so good at penalties? Is there a specific type of penalty that they exploit? Do they have the best mentality in the world? Or is it just pure luck? I think it's safe to say that you'll probably know the biggest parts of Forest history if you're clicking on a video where I talk about their penalty record, but you might not realise just how little penalties have actually contributed to it. Forest won their back-to-back European Cups just 10 years after the very first penalty shootout, which was in the Watney Cup between Manchester United and Hull. That means the two FA Cups they won in 1898 and 1959 were both shootout free. It turns out, so were both of Forest's routes to the European Cup finals, as were both finals. In fact, it would take 17 years after the first shootout for Forest to play in their first shootout, which was actually in the Guinness Soccer Sixes in 1987. Unbelievably, there is actually footage of this shootout, and yeah, this is closer to futsal than normal football, but a trophy is a trophy, and this was the first time Forest won a penalty shootout. Next up was the year after in the Football League Centenary Trophy in 1988. Forest wouldn't just be part of a shootout in the quarterfinals, but also in the semi-finals and the final. Forest would be in all three and win all three, beating Sheffield Wednesday, Tranmere and Aston Villa. This was another tiny trophy lifted, but that was 4 wins out of 4, and it would be another 8 years until Forest were next in a penalty shootout. By then, Brian Clough had retired, but his mentality was still lingering on. After 2 mega free kicks from Ian Wone, a 2-2 draw with Spurs led to a replay. The replay also ended in a 1-1 draw, but Forest would make it 5 out of 5 with a 3-1 penalty win. In the next few years, Forest would also beat Cambridge 4-3 and Stockport 8-7 in the 1998 and 2001 League Cups. That was 7 wins out of 7. And even though there was only a single player still at the club from 1987, Des Walker, who never even took a penalty, Forest were just unbeatable at taking them. Over the next few years, Forest would use their penalty voodoo to beat Port Vale and Tranmere back-to-back in the 2003 League Cup first and second rounds, before losing in normal time to Portsmouth in the third round. But could Forest make it to 10 in a row? The next chance was the 2006 Football League Trophy. It's not really a trophy that Forest ever wanted to participate in, because of course only League 1 and League 2 clubs are invited. Forest's opponents were Bristol City. The City ground was packed out with just over 4,000 fans, which means 26,000 seats had been left empty. But were those dedicated fans about to see history? If you're one of the fans who was at that game, let me know in the comments. That would be crazy if you were watching this video. Grant Holt would miss Forest's first penalty, and then Chris Commons' spot kick was also saved. Jamie McAllister would win the tie. Forest had lost 4-2. That was 9 wins and 1 loss. And would this be a return to the mean? Would Forest go on to lose their last 8 and make that ratio 50-50 like you would expect it should be? Well, in the next year, the first round of the League Cup, Forest would beat Chester 4-2. 4 years later, they'd beat Notts County again in the first round of the League Cup 4-3. The magic was still there. The next time this record was at risk was the 14th of August 2018, once again in the first round of the League Cup. Bury were the visitors, and after a Matty Cash equaliser in the 93rd minute, the game again went to penalties. Lolly scored, Osborne scored, Dawson scored, Murphy scored and Watson scored. Both teams were on 5 out of 5. The 6th penalty Cash would miss, but Miller would miss too, and this would go on until it was 9-9. Every single player had taken one. Lolly stepped up again and scored again, but O'Connell couldn't match it. The longest shootout in Forest history had also ended with a Forest win. 12 wins, 1 loss. The next few years were crazy for penalty shootouts. The playoff semi-final, of course, Samba saves the 13th win. Next was Wolves in the League Cup in the Gibbs White Derby. Henderson would be a master, 14 wins. We got revenge on Bristol City in the second round of the 2023 League Cup in the 15th win, and the year after, in the same round, Forest would slug it out for a draw with Newcastle United. The Geordies were the biggest club that Forest had faced in a penalty shootout since Spurs all the way back in 1996. But would they be able to make it 16 out of 17? Sadly, as we already know from the start of this video, they couldn't. Sangare and Taiwo would miss the target altogether, and for the first time in Forest history, their win percentage would drop underneath 90%. Surely the streak was now over, right? Well, no. That year Forest were part of 3 more penalty shootouts in the FA Cup, the 4th and 5th rounds, as well as the quarter-final against Brighton. They won all 3. They were now at 19 wins from 21 shootouts. And how is that even possible? 90.5% of the time, Forest win a penalty shootout. Just to show how good this really is, I made a graph of every single current Premier League club with their win percentages since penalty shootouts were invented. Burnley are the closest, but they've had half the amount of shootouts, and when Forest had only played 10, as we know, we'd already won 9. What makes these stats even weirder is that 90.5 is actually lower than Forest's normal penalty goal record since 1960. For example, John Robertson would take 36 in the first division, he would score 34. Stuart Pearce would take 19, he would score all 19. Overall, across all of history, 93% of Forest penalties have gone in. The expected goal from a penalty is 0.79, which is 79% of penalties are a goal. Forest have been performing at 14% higher than the average for more than 75 years. It has to be said though, modern Forest has brought this down a little bit. Before, it was actually 97. Brennan Johnson would score 4 of his 7 in the league. Lewis Graben would score 11 of the 17 that he took, while Andre Ayew, Jamal Abdoun, Lee Tomlin and Neil Harris were among a dozen or so Forest players who took a single penalty and would miss. So, do Forest have some kind of weird, unique mentality that makes them good at penalties? Nigel Clough and Stuart Pearce were mentally tough and very technically gifted players. In the League One era, Grant Holt and Jack Lester were composed strikers who had done it at a higher level. In the decade after, players like Assombalonga, Lyle Taylor and Henry Lansbury all exuded confidence on the ball. Some of you might remember the Bristol City game back in 2021 that proved how much a single penalty going in can change an entire season. But I don't think you can rule this down to a single thing. More realistically, over time, Forest have had 5 slightly better than average penalty takers, combined with some really good penalty stoppers in Crossley, Camp and Samba. If you combine good penalty takers with good penalty savers, you get this kind of record. And I'm not sure it's something Forest themselves will care about, but as fans, I think it is something we should be proud of. Just like the academy streak, it's something that makes you proud to be a tricky tree. So there you have it. Over 75 years, across multiple generations of players, managers and eras, Forest have turned penalties into something more than just luck. They've turned scoring them into a habit, a culture, maybe even a statement. From the Clough era to Cooper and the present day, Forest have consistently found a way to step up when it matters the most. So next time you hear that dreaded extra time whistle, probably in the first or second round of the League Cup knowing Forest, remember, the East Midlands might just have the best penalty takers in the world. What do you think? Is there a team out there you think could break Forest streaks? Well, let me know in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more Forest related videos on this channel, and I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.